Welcome to the Stepmom Side with Alicia Crasco, the podcast for stepmoms ready to create the life they want and one they actually have a say in. Here we talk all things stepmom life and just a little bit more. Leave the superficial conversations at the door and get ready for perspective shifts and actionable advice to help you on your way to creating the life you want, one step at a time. Hi, Helen. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be having this conversation.
Yeah, I am pretty sure that my audience doesn't know you. Can you tell me or us a little bit about you?
Yeah, I'm a healthy relationships coach. So I help givers to build confidence and boundaries so that they can have more balanced and rewarding relationships. My background is in human resources. Did that for a long time, but then transitioned to becoming a coach and haven't looked back since. Yeah.
I'm sure that it's incredibly rewarding. Hard sometimes, but like super rewarding.
It's
Being a coach.
incredibly rewarding.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about people pleasing, which I am well versed in. I was the biggest people pleaser for the longest time until I wasn't, right? So if you're talking to somebody that actually, let's start here. Why do you think people please? Why do you think people turn into people pleasers? Let's try that.
So for a start, like for anyone that's not familiar with what a people pleaser is,
Oh, good. Yeah.
it's basically somebody that has this drive or this urge to make other people happy, but it's often at the expense of their own needs and wants. So it kind of has a lovely side to it because you're very caring and looking out for other people, but it means it can lead to you overextending yourself and getting ill. And I'm sure we'll get more into that. And although I do kind of talk about people pleasers, I don't think like that's who you are fundamentally. Like it's a pattern that we develop. And pretty much everyone that I've spoken to that identifies as a people pleaser say that they have been like that as far as they can remember. So basically since childhood. And I identify with that as well. Like I was the ultimate people pleaser. So it's one of those, if you like, survival strategies that we develop as children to keep ourselves safe, to kind of get the love and attention that we need, except it means that we do it at the expense of having to hide parts of ourselves because we don't think they're acceptable or they're going to be loved. And so we become like a chameleon, or we bend ourselves out of shape so that mum and dad will still like us, or or the kids at school will still like us. And of course, like with any survival strategy, we do what we find works. And it's all at an unconscious level, so we don't know that we're doing it, but we just, at an unconscious level, we figure out that this is how the world works. So if I make other people happy, then they'll like me, they'll give me attention and love, and that must be how it all works.
Yeah, that's relatable. My parents got divorced when I was 2, so I don't remember them together at all. And I've got an older sister that's 11 and a half months older, and then a younger sister that's like 6 years younger. And I know that my mom was overwhelmed as a single mom, and it was easier for me to anticipate, read the room, see what needed to be done, and do those things without being asked, which in turn like made me the golden child. And then like I was painfully shy. I don't think I've ever said this before on a podcast. I was painfully shy as a kid, like to the point where people were like, does she ever talk? I didn't. Like I was just really painfully shy. Now on the flip side, my older sister talked all the time. And I would like, if my grandmother had picked us up and like we were going to go out to eat or we wanted to do something, I would just tell her, hey, tell her we want to go here. Like Red Lobster was always my choice, like growing up as a kid, like that was the restaurant of choice. And tell her that we want to go here. I would never say it because, yeah, you feel like your needs or your wants, as trivial as they may seem, are too much. And it's just easier to take care of everyone else. And then it transpires into adulthood. And then you're like, what the hell? Like, for the last 20 years, I've been doing what everyone else wants. Like, I don't even like this. Like, I'm not even happy. Like, what is happening? I'm not doing this anymore. So, what do you think if you know somebody's in, or if you can recognize, like, hey, I'm in this pattern of people pleasing? Are there any, or maybe I'm in this pattern, I'm not 100% sure. What pattern should people look for?
Mm. Classic signs are that you say yes to things automatically before you've ever even thought about it. And then quite often you're going to end up regretting saying yes, and then end up resenting the other person because you said yes to something that they asked you to do. So that's the classic sign. Other signs are that you pretend that everything is fine. So
Mm,
you wear that fake smile all the
yeah.
time, but things aren't fine.
Yeah.
You ignore how you feel about things because, quite frankly, you don't think that it's important, because you're so concerned about other people and how they feel and what they need and what their problems are, and you're so invested in other people, you're just ignoring what you feel or what you need. Also, you tend to avoid conflict because you don't really feel like you can handle it, and you're worried that that the relationship will fall apart or it will get worse if you disagree with someone, or dare to have your own opinion. And then also, when we're people pleasing, we tend to complain about things, but we don't kind of do anything proactive about it. So we'll like complain and we'll just stay in that situation.
Yeah. Misery
So
loves
those are,
company.
yeah, yeah. So those are some kind of classic signs.
Okay. So you pulled out all of the ones that I did, all of them. Like that. I'm like, wow. Yeah. I did that. I did that. I did that. I did that. And I did that too. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially like as a stepmom for me, I had given up people pleasing. Like I told you off camera, like I was a massive people pleaser. And then I swung the pendulum like 180 and was like burning bridges left and right and like adding gasoline to the fire because it was fun. Like, watch this. I'm going to show you that I'm not doing this anymore. Right. It was making quite the statement. And then I became a stepmom and I found that I was kind of back in that to a degree. So then I had this internal conflict of like, I stopped doing this in like the worst possible way. I stopped doing this, but here I'm finding myself back in that. And I did complain a lot because a lot of my life was outside of my control until I got help and then like figured out like, wait, even though like there's a lot of things that are outside of my control, I still have a lot of control. So if somebody is listening to this and they're nodding along, like, yeah, I did all of those things, or I do all of those things currently, what steps would you say like they should try first to like get out of that cycle? Or is it possible to get through or get out of that cycle like on your own? Or is it typically better to get help?
Ooh, there's a lot to unpack there. So
I
for
know
a
I'm like,
start,
that's a lot of questions.
I know. For a start, I would say it's a journey. So don't
Mhm,
expect a quick fix like overnight,
mhm.
because like if there was a magic pill to stop people pleasing, then I would be selling it.
Okay, yeah, that would be a great
I know.
product.
It would, wouldn't it? So don't expect miracles. But yeah, we can certainly begin to break free of those people pleasing patterns. The first step for any kind of change is growing your self-awareness, because you
Mhm,
can't change something unless you know that you're doing it. So even just by noticing when you automatically say yes to something, or noticing when you feel off, or like when you do feel annoyed that you've agreed to something, like actually, like that's already great. Like you're raising your self-awareness. It gives you an opportunity then to do things differently in the future. A good starting point is 3 times a day to check in with yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Like, sounds so simple, but when we're people pleasing, we just don't do it. So ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? And give yourself time to really check in with yourself. And then also ask, what do I need right now? Because we don't do it, and then we wonder, why we're exhausted at the end of the day and why we're feeling resentful. So those are just like kind of 2 little things to help people get started on this journey. And then you were also asking about, can we kind of go on this journey alone, or do we need help? So I think there is quite a bit that you can begin to do on your own, like this, beginning to raise your self-awareness, through journaling, or like through meditation, through reading books. However, I do think that we heal in relationships with other people. So it's like, yeah, like I could say I could read a book about boundaries or something, and that's great, but it's not until I'm in relationship with someone else that I can test out what I've learned, and like see if it works.
Yeah.
And see how that interaction unfolds, and whether I can actually not people please in that circumstance or not. So I
Yeah.
do think we need to be in relationship with other people, and of course, having people to support you is always going to help.
I think that that is such an important point to make because, yeah, in a textbook world, if you're reading a book and it says, oh, do all of these things, well, if I'm reading it and in my textbook world brain that I'm reading, I can absolutely do all of these things. But then when you're in a relationship, wait, okay, so it's not a textbook world anymore. Now we're in the real life. Now we're dealing with somebody else. How am I going to respond or how am I going to react to this? So I think that's great. And if you have support and if you can find people and just be honest with them and say, hey, you know what, Helen, I'm trying to work on people pleasing. So if you see me exhibiting X, Y, and Z behaviors, can you call me out on it? Which is kind of scary to say, hey, I need help and I'm struggling with this, but I'm trying to work on this. But having that accountability is so incredibly important. But I want to go back to um, the example that you used about saying yes to something when you really wanted to say no. Because what that says to me, and you did use the word boundaries, I think that's something a lot of people struggle with. And like in a stepmom world, in a wife world, in a relationship world, in a sibling world, in a parental role, like any of the things. Can you talk to me a little bit about boundaries and why they're so important?
Oh my God, like boundaries are basically how you take care of yourself in the world. It's
And I
like,
love that you put it that way because people are like, they're for other people. They're not for other people. Boundaries are for yourself.
they
Yes.
really are for yourself. Yes, yes. And they need to teach this stuff at school.
Yeah. 100%. Totally agree.
Because we don't learn about it. So boundaries are basically, well, one way to think about them is like to imagine a country, and what defines a country is its border, which is the line around the country. And if you think about it, boundaries are our borders, except that they're invisible. So they're just as real, but we don't see them. So like, different kinds of boundaries that we can talk about, and non-exhaustive list, but there are things like your time boundaries. So when do you start and finish work? Like, when do you go to bed? Like, how long is it okay for you to spend with your family of origin? Those sorts of things. There's your physical boundaries, like who's it okay to have hug you, or like who's it okay to let into your home. And then there are our emotional boundaries. So
These are the
us not.
trickiest.
Hmm?
These are the trickiest, I think.
Go on.
The emotional ones, I think that they're the trickiest ones.
Emotional boundaries, they are. Yeah, I think I would agree with you. Yeah, and but it is simply like, I say simply, it's not simple.
Yeah.
But it
They're
is
tricky, but
about like,
listen, simply.
simply like, it's about, you know, me holding on to and owning my feelings and not splurging them all over you. And then, you know, similarly, like knowing when somebody else has their feelings, that they're their feelings and I don't need to take responsibility for their feelings. I can let them have them. Yeah.
hmm That's
Yeah.
the hardest part, right? Because how people treat you is more about them than it is about you. And I
Mm.
think everyone, for the most part, understands that, right? And you can say that, okay, how Helen is treating me is more about her and whatever she's going through than it is about me. But then when you get into a sticky situation or a hairy situation and you are having an outburst or I'm having an outburst, it's hard for the person witnessing that to not take it personally. Like, what did I do? Especially if you're in a people pleasing role. Can you talk to that a bit?
Yeah, yeah, because when you're people pleasing, you were talking earlier about kind of that being on like hyper alert,
hmm
like like being really aware of how other people are feeling. And because we're so tuned into how other people are feeling, we're it's almost like, you know, we're like this radio picking up other people's feelings, waves, and we then adapt ourselves according to how that other person is feeling,
Yeah. That's
because
exhausting.
it is exhausting. Yeah, but it's because like we feel responsible for their happiness,
hmm
which we're not, by
Yeah.
the way.
Oh, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, but when you're people pleasing, it really feels like that.
Mhm.
And so we take on that responsibility, and it doesn't work, but we just try harder and harder to make it work.
Mhm. So it's kind of like bashing your head into a wall and getting no results. And but you like keep doing it because you think that it's gonna work.
Yeah, 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 like you're ever optimistic. like like
Yeah.
like oh, maybe I can like help them, you know, to change and help take away their pain, and then they'll be happy, and then that would be great because then I'll be happy.
hmm
Yeah, it's quite dangerous.
Yeah,
Mm.
happy is an inside job or happiness is an inside job. And the I love that you touched on like being it's like a radio where you're like picking up frequencies or signals like all the time. And looking back, I am like, how did I do that all the time? It is so exhausting to try to constantly read the room, but then like read parts of the room and it's this part and that part. And something I saw a few years ago was rather than being the thermometer, be the thermostat. Rather than, like adjusting your temperature to wherever you are, just be the thermostat and set it. You are who you are. And I think it's really hard to get to that point and having that confidence of, you know what, I'm going to show up like this. And maybe that's too much for these people. Maybe that's not enough for these people. But working on that confidence. Can you speak a little bit to like building confidence as a people pleaser?
Oh, yes. So just about that, I love that thing about being a thermostat, and it reminds me of Nedra. Oh, I'm gonna
Oh, I know who you're
mispronounce
talking
her
about.
name. Yes,
Yes.
Nedra on Instagram.
Nuggets with Nedra.
One of the
Um,
things that she talks about is like, stop trying to match your energy to other people's energy. Like
yeah.
like like don't do that, because then you're wasting your energy.
hmm
You really are. Yeah, so don't do that. But yeah, about building confidence. So I am our confidence, like, to me, you know, our confidence um is kind of in two layers, if you like.
Okay.
So there's like, the confidence could be the house above the foundations, and it's the confidence in the things that you do, like the things that maybe you go and learn to do, like your job, or like learning to drive or learning to cook. And you know, we all kind of have to go through a process of building confidence in our abilities, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so we start off with that kind of, what is it, unconsciously incompetent phase, and then we become consciously incompetent when we
Mm-hmm.
realize we don't know what we're doing. And then we gradually move to the kind of consciously competent, and we're beginning to get to grips with it, and then we become like unconsciously competent. And that's fine for like stuff out in the world, but to me there's like a foundation layer of self-confidence. And if you don't have that foundation layer of self-confidence, then your confidence in like your abilities can get so easily knocked. So like if somebody says, oh well, that's crap, or like, or what you did was just really rubbish, like if you don't have that self-confidence, that self-belief, then what they say to you is just going to like land right in your heart,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to crumble. So yeah, we definitely need to build up that self-belief,
Yeah.
and that starts with that self-worth piece, like knowing that you are worthy regardless of what you do or what you don't do, or like what roles you play in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so let's say, obviously, that should start when you're a kid, right? But a lot of times it doesn't start when you're a kid. So let's say that you're an adult now and you've realized that you don't have that self-belief that I am worthy. I should be confident, but I'm not. What are steps that people can take to become more self-confident or to have more worthiness? Do you have any like tips on how do I do this? Like I don't even know what I'm doing. Where do I start?
Mm. Well, happily, it's tied up in the sort of the same sort of steps that you would take to break free from, people pleasing patterns. So for a start, it is really understanding what is important to you, like as your solid foundation. So really understanding, for example, like what your values are, like what really gets you out of bed in the morning, what you really care about, so that you're really solid with that. And then you're not so buffeted around by everybody else's opinions, especially their opinions of you. That you're
Yeah.
really clear on, this is what I stand for, this is what's motivating me, and it's coming from within.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. And I always say to my audience, other people's opinions of you are none of your business. It doesn't matter, especially in a step family. Like it doesn't matter what the other host thinks of you. If they think that you are a crap stepmom or a crap person, it doesn't matter. Like innately, do you think that you're a good person? Are you happy with the decisions that you're making, the choices that you're making? Great. Then that's it. But it is really hard to not take other people's opinions into account, right? It's really hard to shut off the outside noises. It's really hard to not want to know or not seek that outside validation. And then
Mm.
once you can recognize it, I think you get better at it and you speak kinder to yourself. And I always talk to my audience about giving yourself grace when you're especially when you're navigating something new. I mean, most people haven't been a stepmom before or they haven't been divorced before. And so there's no manual about this. Every situation is different. And so it's like, okay, if I'm struggling in my role as a stepmom, how am I going to talk to myself? And at first, it wasn't very good. But then I thought, okay, if Helen comes to me and she's struggling in her role as a stepmom, and she says, which I don't think that you're a stepmom, but if she says, hey, Alicia, I'm struggling with the exact same issue that I'm struggling with, what am I going to say to her? Am I going to say, you're an idiot? Like, why would you do that? Or why did you do that? Or you should have done this. Of course, I'm not going to talk to you like that. You've got to speak kinder to yourself. Give yourself a little bit of grace,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because again, when we're people pleasers, we tend to have a really fierce inner critic.
Yeah,
That
I
voice
know.
that is always saying, "Oh, you're so stupid," or like I don't know, you're too old or you're too young or you can't do that. And it keeps knocking us down.
Mm-hmm.
So you're absolutely right to talk about actually developing that voice of self-compassion as an alternative is actually, again, like one of the keys to building your confidence.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's really hard to get to that point. I want to talk about something else that you had touched on, the feeling of ick or just like not feeling good on the inside. Like if you're a people pleaser, can you touch on that a bit
mm.
or elaborate?
Yeah. So when we're people pleasing, we tend not to notice what we're feeling. Like we ignore it, or we minimize it, or we distract ourselves from it. Um, but we do have feelings, like,
Yeah.
amazingly. And so what we can do when we begin to ask ourselves these checking questions and like really give ourselves time to feel what we're feeling, we'll begin to notice those times when actually maybe what somebody has just said to us, it just doesn't make us feel good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that is a cue. That is a cue for us to just be curious about what we're feeling. And also, again, as recovering people pleasers, just to ask ourselves, is there a boundary issue here? Like, has somebody just kind of asked me, say, a question that actually I don't really want to respond to?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, we're really good at ignoring those more kind of subtle feelings. And so we need to learn to tune into them so that we can notice them and then do something about them before they all like build up build up until one day we explode, and
Yeah.
then
I mean, I
everyone
don't know what you're
around us
talking
is
about.
like, what's up with Alicia?
That's basically what happened. Yeah, that's basically what happened. So I went from, like I said, I went from being a people pleaser to not, and then I became a stepmom and I kind of went back into that. And but the questions is a perfect example for my audience because I got tons of questions as a stepmom, like, does the ex-wife like you? Do you guys get along? What's it like being a stepmom? Or, were you the other woman? You live in their house? Like, what's that like? What you would never ask me these questions if I said, hey, I just got married. But because I said I'm a stepmom, all of a sudden all of the invasive questions come, right? Or and it was a lot. And like I said, I went back to people pleasing because I wanted everyone to like me. And then I'm like, what am I doing? But when those invasive questions came, I didn't like them. And I knew that I didn't like them, but I felt like I had to answer them to kind of justify. I don't know what I was even trying to justify, but to kind of justify that I'm not a bad person. Like, no, I'm not. I wasn't the other woman. And yeah, the ex-wife and I, we do get along because then the follow-up questions come like, is there a lot of drama? Is she crazy? Do the kids like you? Do you not like them? All of the things. And then, so I would answer them in like a book form. Like I would give you like, what do you want to know? I'll tell you everything just to justify whatever. Like I'm a good person. Like I'm not crazy. Like she's not crazy. Like, no, everything is good. And then God forbid there was any sort of thing going on. Then I was like, listen to this. Like, I can't wait to tell you. Right. Because I want that validation of like, oh my gosh, that is really weird. Or like, that is really crazy. And then I got to the point of like, you know what? I quit people pleasing for a long time and I'm right back in it. I'm going to do that again. And I realized if I didn't answer the questions, I didn't get follow-up questions. Or if somebody asked me something, like I remember the very first time I'd been practicing what I was going to say because I knew the questions were going to come, right? Like you're at work and people are like, oh, you're a stepmom. Tell me about it. I'm like, I don't know what you want to know. But I remember I had practiced. The next time somebody asks me an invasive question about being a stepmom, I'm going to say, did you really just ask me that? And so I did that. And then they were caught off guard. I was ready for it. So I wasn't caught off guard because I knew it was coming because it's always coming. And then they were caught off guard and they're like, oh, yeah, I guess I shouldn't have asked you that. Right. And I thought, Well, now this is really awkward because now we're both sitting here because I didn't answer this question and you didn't answer this question. But I'm not going to say anything because I don't need to nervously talk, just to
Mm.
nervously talk. I'm just going to sit here and see what happens. As I'm like sweating it, right? I'm like, like, what if they don't like me? What if they think I'm too much? What if they think I'm crazy? Like, what if they think I'm a jerk? And then I thought, let them. I'm okay
Mm.
with that because
Mm.
I don't want to answer all these questions. I don't
Mm.
want to give you information that A doesn't matter and B is none of your business.
Yeah.
And see if you
Yeah.
don't like me, I'm okay with that. At this point, I'm a thermostat. I'm okay with you not liking me.
Beautifully done.
We have to
Yeah.
practice it though, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
just innately come.
Yeah. Yeah. Practicing beforehand, like either like on your own or with someone that you can practice with, can really help. So that when you're on the spot, it just will be easier in that
Mhm.
moment to hold on to what you wanted to say and not give in and
Yeah.
answer all the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, it's really beautiful like you doing that, because it is, yeah, it's teaching other people your boundaries. It's like,
Mhm.
actually no, I'm not open to answering these questions. mm, mm,
Now what do we do? Yeah, right.
mm.
Thank you. I had to practice in the mirror, in front of the mirror, because my face, I have this problem, like my face doesn't always match what's coming out of my mouth.
Mm.
Sometimes I'm like, oh, it's really great to see you. I'm really excited about it, but I'm not, right? And so
Mm.
I had to get to the point where I could say that to somebody that maybe I wasn't a big fan of and mean it to a degree, but also not have this face like what's coming out of my mouth is nice, but what's on my face is I actually wish that you weren't here, or I wish I wasn't having this
Mm.
engagement, right? So
Mm.
yeah, it's hard. So, okay, if you are people pleasing, and we had talked about situations that come up or maybe like health things that come up, can you talk about that a little bit? Like what does it do to you like internally?
Ew. Mm. So I don't know if you've ever read, The Body Says No.
No, but you know
Um,
what? I just saw that book today.
mm,
I've never read it.
yeah.
And I'm
Well,
like, I need to get that.
yeah, it speaks to this. Like,
Okay.
I mean, I truly believe, like, if we're not able to say no, then eventually our bodies are going to begin to say no for us.
Hmm.
That's what happened for me at work. So in my early 20s, I was busy being my people pleasing self, and I wanted to impress, and I wanted to do all the things. And so I didn't take proper breaks. My job was a administrator, sat at a computer for long hours. And I I wasn't taking care of myself at all. And also I was very, very stressed. Like, my home life was very, very stressful as well, which is another story.
Yeah, I get it though.
um,
Same, yeah.
so it's kind of like stress everywhere. So that was kind of contributing. And what began to happen was that I developed repetitive strain injury in my hands and my wrists and my arms and my shoulders. So it's just like kind of increasing amount of pain. And I ignored it
Hmm.
because that's what I was used to doing, ignoring my pain.
Hmm.
And like, even when I was having trouble sleeping because my arms were so painful, like I still was just taking some painkillers and then ignoring it. And it had to get to the point where I was literally sitting at work, and I could not type anymore because it was too painful. And I realized, I need to say something. I absolutely did not want to say anything, but
Hmm.
it forced me to. Like, I couldn't say no to all the work and all the demands. So my body, bless it, was beginning to say no for me.
You can't say no here. Let me help you. I'll just shut everything down.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see this a lot. And especially, being online and you see people talking about burnout and and I'm overwhelmed or I'm stressed out about this, that, and the other, but I'm in the middle of a launch or I'm in the middle of this or that, or I'm in the middle of a book launch or, I had a book weekend, like you did this weekend. But I've got to keep going, right? So then you're on adrenaline and then you just crash. And your body is like, you know what, we're going to be laid up here on the couch for the next few days because what you need to do is sleep. And it's amazing what our body does to protect us or heal us. But yeah, when you're people pleasing, like I'm not, you know what, I'm in some pain right now, but I'm not going to say anything because I need to show up and be present for my partner. I need to show up and be present at work. I need to show up for my kids. I need to show up for X, Y, and Z. Or you know what I'm going through is not as bad as what that person's going through. So I'm going to be there for them. And when you talked about like ignoring your own body signs or ignoring what you're feeling, or if you are saying yes, but innately you're like in your gut and your intuition, you're like, I don't actually want to do that, but you do it anyway. And then your body's like, hey, by the way, we're not doing anything.
we're not doing anything. Yeah. Like, I mean, I had to take a few months off. I went to see the doctor, and of course their advice was just kind of very medical. It was like, well, rest, take painkillers. But that actually, I think, started me partly on a journey of kind of self-discovery, because I realized, like, no, like there's more to it than that. Like, yeah, I could rest, maybe my arms will get better and I'll be able to go back to work. But I knew that there was some like kind of psychological or like personality thing going on that would mean that maybe even if I didn't get into the same issues again, I was going to get into something else. And that is it's a contributing factor to burnout, is kind of is having like either a very driven personality, or to be kind of stuck in these like people pleasing patterns. And I think I've probably had both.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I can relate to that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'll just get through this one more thing and then I'll rest. And then one more thing turns into like 10 more things. And inevitably, this crash comes at like the worst time. Right? And you're in the middle of whatever you're in the middle of. And I don't have time for this right now. Your body's like, we're making time.
Yeah. I mean, I feel lucky that it's something that I've been able to recover from. It does mean that I'm susceptible to kind of recurrences, I guess, of repetitive strain injury. So I have to be much more mindful. Like, I have to do stretches and I have to take breaks. And if I don't, then my body begins to remind me, like with little aches and pains. Which of course now I'm a lot more better at noticing, and we'll do something about it a lot earlier on. But it means I am more prone to those things, and that happens with a lot of people that I work with, that they've developed chronic health conditions of one kind or another, and they attribute at least some of that to them ignoring their own pain and their own needs and their own feelings in the past.
Yeah, I can completely relate to all of that. So if somebody like you has gone through this before, what would you, and so they know, like, okay, so I'm susceptible to it. What should I do to keep myself out of there, or to keep myself from like going back to that? Do you have any like accountability things, whether it's like for themselves or, hey, here's how I know you mentioned breaks, but like, here's how I keep myself from going back to people pleasing.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of it comes down to boundaries, basically.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So, whether like so at work, it's about honoring, like, when are your start and finish times? Like, when is it that you're taking a break? And then when you do take a break, like, is it a proper break? Or are you still thinking about all the work things, like, because we need mental breaks as well as like actually taking a physical break from work. It's about, you know, your relationships with other people at work, like how are you, you know, protecting your personal life, like how much do you want to interact with, say, colleagues outside of work or not. Are you like protecting your time in terms of, I don't know, if somebody asks you to work a late shift or to take on a new project, like are you able just to pause and check in with yourself before you say yes to something else? And yeah, so boundaries at work, boundaries in your relationships with other people, because I think quite often when we're people pleasers, we can really attract the takers in this world.
100%.
Yeah. And they will overstep your boundaries before you've even blinked. And yeah, so it does come to like, well, actually, yeah, I need to be able to identify what I need to take care of myself, so that I can then learn to advocate for myself, to actually to say no, actually, like I don't want to watch football on TV every night. Like I want to go out with my girlfriends, or I want to go in to the sewing club or to the writers club, and just simple things like that, just like being able to speak up for what you want and know that it's okay to do so. Yeah.
Yeah. So why do you think people are scared to say no?
It's such a small word, isn't it?
And it's
And
a
yet
complete sentence, but it's so hard to say.
it's so hard to say. I think some of the reason that we struggle to say no is that we are scared of the impact that will have on our relationship with the other person. We're scared that they'll criticize us, or they'll reject us, or they'll leave us. Like we might rationally, we might know that that's not the case, but if deep down inside that's how we really feel, then that's enough to stop us from saying no. I also think we find it hard to live with that discomfort, like you were talking about earlier, when you challenged somebody that was asking you inappropriate questions. We can find that discomfort of setting a boundary really hard to tolerate. So we don't want to do it. We'd rather just say yes and keep the peace, even though it means that we maybe are agreeing to things we don't want to, and we're keeping ourselves stuck in that pattern. There's something about that discomfort. We don't want to feel it, and yet actually know that it will pass. Like it's temporary. You can live through it. You've done hard things. You can live with the discomfort of saying no.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, like the example that I use, like I said, I was like sweating, like, well, now what do we do? Because this is really awkward. Like, now what? But no, and that's something that you have to practice though, too. I'm going to say no. I know, okay, I can see that this is coming up. I know that I'm going to be asked to go to a pickup or a drop off, like for my audience, like pick up or drop off the kids, or I know that I'm going to be asked to go to a sporting event, or I know that I'm going to be asked to do something that I don't want to do. Saying no is okay. And like we discussed, like saying no is a complete sentence. I don't need to say, no, Helen, I can't do that because you know what? At noon today, I'm going to be having lunch. And then after I have lunch, you know what? I'm going to have office hours for my private community. And then after that, I have to go and get my daughter. And then after that, I have to start to, you don't need all of that background information. I know I would catch myself doing that because I'm justifying why I'm saying no. Like, no is okay to say, or no, that doesn't work for my schedule today. Okay. But I don't need to go into this lengthy dissertation about why it doesn't work. But when you're practicing saying no, it helped to practice sitting or knowing that there was going to be discomfort. But something that I struggled with was with the disappointment. I would rather you be mad at me than be disappointed. And that is really hard because disappointment is a normal emotion, right? Now, if you want to be disappointed, go ahead. But I really struggled with you being disappointed because then that means that I let you down. I didn't live up to my potential. I was no longer this perfectionist that was completely unattainable, but I was willing to die trying. And that was really hard. And just like coming to terms with, I can't do it all. I can do anything, absolutely, but I can't do everything. And I feel like we get caught up in this false narrative that we're sold where you can do everything, you can have it all. You can at some expense, right? If you're going to do it all, you're going to have help and you've got to ask for help. Somebody that's got it all has help. Maybe they have a team. Maybe they, for me, if I'm being a really great coach, I'm in on your coaching session. I'm leaving my family out of it. I'm leaving my podcasting out of it. I'm leaving my personal life out of it. Now, when I'm sitting here, like interviewing you on a podcast, my family is out of it. My coaching is out of it. My personal life is out of it. So you can do everything, but something is going to suffer while you're doing the other part of it. Right. And I think that that's a weird dynamic that people don't always see or understand, really, if that makes sense.
Yeah. We have many choices, but you're right. We also have a finite number of hours in the day. We all have our own kind of energy capacity, and so we do have to make choices. Like, what do we want more of in our life?
Peace, probably. A little bit of calmness. Wouldn't that be great? Maybe more hours in a day. That would be another magic pill if you could sell those too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. More hours in the day and the stop people pleasing pill. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So you get on that. Let me know when you have them, and we'll definitely get you set up to like sell those to everyone. Okay. So tell me about your book, Drop the Fake Smile.
Drop the fake smile. Yes. So I launched a book this last weekend called Drop the Fake Smile, the Recovering People Pleaser's Guide to Self-Love, Boundaries, and Healthy Relationships. So the subtitle kind of describes what it's all about. And I'm so excited to have finally got it out into the world. And what it is it's a mixture of things. So some of it is little anecdotes from my own life and my own journey of recovering from chronic people pleasing. Some of it is kind of just guidance on the steps that people can take to begin to stop people pleasing. And there's also exercises and there's journal prompts to help you grow your self-awareness and to begin to implement the stuff that I talk about in the book. So, yeah.
Was it a little scary, like putting your own personal story in parts of it?
The hardest part about writing the book was delving back into my past and coming up with those stories, because they were often very painful memories. When you're writing, you have to go to those places and you have to swim around and remember how it all felt and all the different characters, and to really to make it real when you're writing the book. All I can say is that I'm very glad that I was in therapy at the time. Because it brings it all up, but you kind of have to go there so that people really resonate with it.
You have to be relatable and like personable, and hey, here's real life examples. Totally agree with you. Okay, so if somebody wants this book, where can they find it?
It's everywhere.
Really?
Yeah, it is. So it is. It's available from all good retailers, like,
Okay.
I don't know, Barnes and Noble and Waterstones and stuff. It is, of course, also on Amazon. For those that are this side of the pond, so if you're in the UK, you can also order it from the publisher, Conscious Dreams Publishing, and that way you can get a signed copy from me. Yeah.
Really cool. Okay, very cool. I might go to the UK just to get a signed copy. And I do like that publishing name, Conscious Dreams Publisher. Like that's kind of cool. I like that. Conscious
Yeah,
Dreams.
yeah. I absolutely love them because they're all about promoting like diversity and inclusion and diverse writers. And they particularly are interested in anything that basically sort of empowers people and inspires them. So
I
yeah.
love that. Yeah. So what was the catalyst for you to write this book?
Mm. It was the book that I needed to read about 8 years ago when I realized that I was a people pleaser and wanted to figure out like how to stop doing that and didn't have a clue.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I didn't have this book, I've kind of had to go on my own journey and do all sorts of things, So I've done the therapy and the coaching and meditating and journaling and body work and you name it. And so I then was like, okay, I now understand the building pieces, like the essentials.
Yeah.
So I want to put that in a book because if I needed to read it, I'm sure there are other people that need to read it.
Yeah. Okay, so where can people find you online?
The easiest place to find me is my website, which is helensnape.com. So it's Helen and SNAPE.com.
Okay,
Yeah.
very, very nice. Thank you so much for being here. Like I love talking about people pleasing because once you're out of it, like you can look back and see all of the things. But yeah, thank you. This is very near and dear to my heart. So I appreciate your time and I appreciate you being here.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I've loved the conversation.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this week's episode. If anything was helpful or resonated with you, please share it on social media and tag me. I'm just at Alicia Crosco. And if you could leave a 5-star rating and a review while you're at it, that would also be really helpful. And if you find yourself struggling with your stepmom journey and you want a little bit more support without the hefty price tag of coaching, you might want to check out the Stepmom Side community, which is my own private community for stepmoms, where you get to connect with other stepmoms around the world and myself, where I hold weekly office hours and monthly group coaching. It's kind of like you have your own personal coach in your own back pocket. Again, without that hefty price tag. See you next week.